Good afternoon and evening, Razorback Nation. We're back with your Sunday afternoon episode of Razor Recap. We're brought to you by our friends over at Razor Pigs. Looking good never felt so fun. Razor Pigs is the Arkansas board brand, bringing some serious style to the golf course, tailgate, and everywhere in between. From high-quality polos to head-turning hats, they've got what you need to rep the natural state with pride. Found right here at home and now run by a Razorback-loving family, Razor Pigs is where comfort meets cool. So go hog wild and shop Razor Pigs today at razorpigs.us and check out our friends over at Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. You can check them out today. And if you are in Northwest Arkansas, you can check out the Core Brewery Tap Room where you can get Scarlet Letter in all its various flavors as well as their new hard teas. So go check them out today. And not the show I was hoping we would be having today, but as Arkansas does the Arkansas thing, here we are talking about Arkansas loses on the road, in a tight matchup with Ole Miss, where we even talked about it all week. We thought this was going to be one of those shootout type of games. Sure enough, it was. And then Arkansas got the short end of the stick, if you will, with a late turnover in the game. But before we dive into some specifics, your general thoughts on last night's loss against Ole Miss?
It was infuriating to watch. It's just discouraging because you have an offense who is literally a Lamborghini, right? You have probably a top 5 offense in the country. And then you have a defense that I think some high school teams may rival this defense at this point. It's just, and I'm being hyperbolic right here because I'm just upset about it. But at the same time, they just couldn't stop anything. I mean, you had a D2 quarterback go out there, play his first game in the FBS, and you made him look like a Heisman candidate. And I said it like 3 or 4 times, and I put it in multiple pieces leading up to the game, knowing that Austin Simmons was probably going to be out, that Arkansas has an uncanny ability to make backup quarterbacks look like Heisman candidates. And they did it again. I mean, it was ridiculous. They couldn't get pressure. Even whenever they brought 6 or 7 people, you had guys up front. It looked like the offensive line was blocking more than one person at a time sometimes. You just gave them so much room to work. It looked bad. And then the secondary, they just looked just as bad too. Many times you had a lot of miscommunication and then busted coverages, and you can't do that. And I know I'm being really pessimistic up at the front. I have some good things to say too, but it's just how I'm feeling right, the day after.
And I mean, to your point, it's like, we saw a guy, regardless of Austin Simmons on the injury report or not, you know how Lane Kiffin works. It's not an uncommon for him to try to play this game. And then, like, to your point, you have a guy that they bring him in from D2. And I mean, heck, at this point, the way Austin Simmons played the first 2 games of the season, how's this guy not your starting quarterback if he's able to perform like he did last night? But at the end of the day, yes, we talked about the question marks surrounding the defense, leading up to the start of the season. We had question marks around the defensive line. We had question marks around, the secondary. Your only experienced returning unit that made you feel good was the linebackers. And, they even struggled last night as well. And so, to your point, and it's like that meme that goes around where you've got the Bugatti parked in the garage of this shack-looking house. That's what Arkansas is right now. You got this high-powered offense that, let me tell you, we're going to be able to stay with a lot of teams this year purely based on how our offense has been. And, even last night, as bad as the defense was, it's like I talked about this. I think this defense is going to be one of those where if they can get you 1 to 2 stops, you have the chance to go down and win plenty of games. And, not many stops last night, but what does this defense do? You come out at halftime, you stop them force a 3 and out, but then you can't do anything with it. Late in the game where you still have a chance to win, what do they do? Get you the ball back and you go down and unfortunately have a costly turnover instead of, going down, scoring the touchdown and winning the game late in the game. So a lot of pressure on Travis Williams as we go into, keep going forward. You got a road game against Memphis next week, got to bounce back. But there's got to be some serious overhaul, come to Jesus, whatever you want to call it, meeting on this defensive side of the ball because, last night's problem was not the offense by any means.
Right. And I mean, you can blame Jaylen Brown at the end for that fumble, but that's one bad play over 58 minutes of gameplay by the offense, right? That was one bad play, and you can't hinge the entire loss on him, right? And I know he took it personally. I mean, the dude looked distraught after the game, and I feel sorry for him. But it seems like you got to hold on the ball. But it's just it's like the little small mistakes that just add up to losses, and that's kind of the story of Sam Pittman. They have a whole lot of that. I know, like during the press conference, he got mad about someone asking about one-score games. You know what? I'm mad that people are still having to ask that question. You can throw a fit about it, or you can be like, it is what it is. The one thing you don't say is I don't know. Like, stop saying I don't know. I don't know why he keeps saying that. It just may be like I haven't thought about it, or like we haven't, like I don't want to talk about that, and that's the word. That's the phrase he uses, but it's not a good look. It really isn't.
Right.
I mean, he didn't go in on that reporter as bad as like Brian Kelly did. Who I think is a complete tool for the way he acted in his press conference. If you hadn't seen that, you got to go watch it. But at the same time, like, dude, like I know emotions are high, but you got to keep your composure a little bit.
Right. And, that's been, what I've been seeing on social media today is everybody's like, oh, well, look at Pittman. He's 7-18 in one-score games, in his 10 years head coach. And I mean, yeah, it's frustrating, getting that question. And, it's like he said in the press conference, I knew it was coming. It was a matter of time. And yeah, I mean, but another thing, that's something, continuously being brought up, but, partially on the other side of it, if you don't want that question, what do you got to do is start winning these one-score games. And so it's tough. And I mean, like you said, this loss is not on Jaylen Brown. Everybody has a bad game every now and then. And not that he even had a bad game. You had one crucial mistake.
Had a bad moment.
Right. Look at C.J. Brown last year. Where this is this very similar situation. And then look at what he's doing this year. Didn't let that kind of break his attitude, came back, and now he's, one of the starting wide receivers here. So, let's go ahead and start diving into some of the stats. So, let's talk about the good first. What a game by Taylen Green. Everybody's talking about it. Even Kirk Herbstreit on College Game Day yesterday said he could be the most underrated quarterback in the SEC, if not the entire country. And I agree 100% on that. And he came out last night and, showed you why. His performance last night was amazing. It's like the communications team put out there through 3 games this season. Taylen Green leads the country in yards of total offense with 1,173 and yards of total offense per game with 391, not to mention his 307 rushing yards and 102.3 rushing yards per game are the most of any quarterback nationally. Talk about carrying this team on your back week in and week out. And you just need a little bit of help from your defense. And, you look at it through the air, 22 of 35, 305 yards passing, 1 touchdown. Couple of times we got lucky last night with should have been interceptions, whether it get called back by a flag or something like that. But at the end of the day, was finding his receivers, continued to spread the ball out between 9, 10 different receivers last night. On the flip side of that, on the ground, he rushes 14 times for 119 yards and 1 touchdown as well. The number of times he got you out of a tough spot with his legs on 3rd down, and that's why we talked about a little bit before, the show going into, the opening drive of the game. You're at 4th and 2. Drop some type of play for Taylor to, take it and bounce it outside. You got 2 yards. I understand, yes, you have a great kicker. You saw Scott Starzik, unfortunately missed 2 field goals in this game, but hit the 50-something yard at home. But there's a little bit of difference in playing at home and a night game on the road in the SEC. Not saying he can't handle pressure, but that was a lot of pressure to put on your freshman kicker, right off the bat in the opening drive of the game.
Yeah, it is. And the only bad thing about his performance last night were the picks. Or almost picks. He didn't actually have one, but he had 2 or 3 that were dropped, 1 that was called back because of a penalty. So, and that's another thing. The penalties were just ridiculous, which I don't know if it's true, but I saw that this crew is also the crew that was there in Auburn whenever the Bo Nix thing happened. I don't know if that's true or not. I didn't actually look at it. But they were awful, right? And this loss is not on officiating at all, but they were awful, just straight up awful. But yeah, Taylor Green, 305 yards and then another 100 on the ground is just insane. I'd like to see a little bit more passing touchdowns. He only had 1, which I'm being nitpicky here at the same time, but I'd like to see that keep going up, just to have that, that monkey off his back kind of, from last year, whenever he only had 15, now he's got 11 in 3 games. It's just insane. And I just want to see that keep going forward. But like you said, he just put this team on his back, and he's the one who is really, making this happen. But I'd like to point out that most of this is because he has time, right? This offensive line is significantly better than it was last year. Significantly across the board. Center, much better. The guards, much better. And the tackles, much better, right? Corson is a real deal. You got a center who actually goes out there and knows what he's doing too. It's made a world of difference. And now this offense is humming. You got your pieces on the outside. You got Mike Washington, which we haven't even talked about him yet, broke a 47-yard rush for a touchdown. Like, the dude can break it whenever, just at any time. It's just, the defense, man. If they can get you a couple stops, though, you gotta go and you gotta capitalize on it. They don't stop them, or they stop them right after half, and they don't go down and score a touchdown. They stop them again at the end of the game to actually give you a shot to win, and you fumble. So it's, like I said, those little bitty mistakes that end up adding up. Because if you hit both of those field goals, you at least tie the game. If you go forward on 4th and 2nd and you get a touchdown on that first drive, you win the game. If you don't fumble, you score, you win the game. Like, it's just all those what ifs, and that's just, I don't know if I've already said this during the podcast, but that's just like that's a personification of Sam Pittman's career at Arkansas. Is, almost got this win, almost did that, almost did this, and it's frustrating. Like, I like the dude, but it's so much almost you can take, right?
Right. Yeah, and 100%. This offensive line performed phenomenal last night. Kept Taylor, clean for the most part. Gave him time, to distribute the ball, make his reads, and what he didn't have last year. And you jump over to it. Mike Washington, 13 carries for 69 yards and 2 touchdowns. That 47-yard he broke off last night, averaged 5 yards a carry. And then, Braylon Russell got a bulk of carries last night too, where, they couldn't stop him. They didn't have an answer for him. 9 carries for 37 yards and a touchdown as well. Even saw Cam Shanks get 1 carry for 4 yards. But, this rushing attack is very much there. You see it dominated a lot by Talon, but I mean, that's what you're going to have when you have a guy like him. Whenever, you have a mobile quarterback like he is. But, you love to see what Mike Washington's doing when he gets those opportunities. And then you jump over to the receiving part of this. Another game where you're clearly Omega Blake's your guy. He had a big key catch on that last drive that puts you in a good spot. 6 catches, 81 yards. It's 1 touchdown. Mike Washington, 2 catches for 53 yards on some wheel routes. The typical, Bobby Petrino type of, plays he likes to run with those running backs. Jaden Platt, coming out and having a big game at the tight end spot. 3 catches for 53 yards. Jaylen Brown, as we mentioned, unfortunately had that fumble, but he had 4 catches for 40 yards. C.J. Brown, 2 catches for 26. Raylan Sharp, 2 for 23. Rohan Jones getting in the action for 1 catch for 21 yards. Cam Shanks, 1 for 6, and Braylon Russell, 1 for 2. So, the ball's being spread around. He's not as kind of honed in on a guy like Andrew Armstrong was last year. And, I like that that's been consistent through 3 games. It's not been like, oh, it's just because it's, Alabama A&M or Arkansas State. Not to mention Arkansas State gave it Iowa State all they wanted yesterday. So, but, it's a good sign to me that this, Taylor's still continuing to spread the ball around.
Yeah, I was saying if Iowa State's a top 15 team, Arkansas is a top 5 team. They're not a top 25 team. They're bad. We'll see how far they drop in the AP poll. Even though they won, I guarantee you they'll drop.
Right. And so, yeah.
But yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to talk about that's all great. Like I like that this offense is humming. But the look at the defense, Sam Pittman went into this game talking about whoever had the best rushing attack would win, right? That is not the case. That wasn't the case at all. Not Arkansas. Ole Miss, who had what's his name?
Kewan Lacey.
I can't remember his first. Kewan Lacey, who's had like 100-yard games for the last 2 games. They held him to 44 yards. And to be fair, even though Chambliss kind of did what he wanted when he wanted, they still held him to 62 yards. They made most of their touchdowns on the ground, but at the same time, you held this team who has been running on everybody, including Kentucky, to 118 yards. It's through the air where they kicked your butt, 357. So I think the front 7 of Arkansas is really good. I think if you have a team that can't pass, Arkansas is probably going to beat them. Like hand over fist, right? You got a team that can't run the ball, but they pass like crazy. I don't know. I don't know if Arkansas can get a stop to where the offense can actually, outscore them. But so it's a secondary in one part that's not very good, and then you have the pass rush that isn't very good. So it's a weird combination, but I think their run defense is actually pretty dang good.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I saw somebody say, this was supposed to be an all-new secondary, yet looks just like our secondary from last year, getting beat. Guys aren't holding coverage. And it's like you mentioned, those 2 things that you mentioned, our front 7 not being able, or front 4 not being able to get your pressure, and then your secondary struggling with coverage. Those 2 just compound. You're giving your opposing quarterback time to throw, and then your DBs to begin with are already struggling to coverage, and then they have to just cover for that much longer. It's not a great combo. And, who knows, we hadn't mentioned it yet. Kunai Walker injured last night. Good to see him, leave the field, gives the thumbs up. Pittman said in the presser that he was probably going to travel home with the team. Glad to see that wasn't anything super serious. But, he struggled mightily last night. And now, he was one of your starters, and now he'll probably miss, I don't know. I don't know what the exact necessary injury was. I don't know how much time he'll miss, if any,
Yeah.
but you look at that, it's, I don't know why it seems like we always struggle to be able to come up with a good secondary. And I don't know if it's coaching in the secondary, because I mean, this is a, new team, new players. I don't know if it's what it is, but something has to change.
Yeah, and I think I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. To pull a Sam Pittman, I don't know, to be honest. But it has to be from the secondary, right? And I think at this point it's a little bit more than a talent discrepancy, right? I think this is communication, coaching, and perhaps scheme. I don't know enough about defensive scheme to actually make that accusation with my full chest, But at the same time, I see what I see, and you have guys who are big and fast, and they're just out of place. They're not where they need to be. And at the same time, you have guys they're bringing 7 guys, and there's only 5 or 6 guys blocking, and they can't get free. That to me, I don't care if you're a high school, one's gonna be going at the quarterback, and they didn't last night. So I think it has to do with scheme, at least. And I've been super high on Travis Williams like since he got here. I still think he's a good coordinator. I just don't know why he has fits Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin just seems to be his kryptonite.
Yeah. And thinking about that too, the number of times last night, it's like that you had Trinidad Chambliss in a spot to where should have been a sack. And, it's like Pittman said in the presser, the tackling last night was atrocious, abysmal, whatever, word you want to use to describe that means terrible. Feel free, because that's what it was. We could get hands on a guy and you weren't taking him to the ground. It's like you were trying to arm tackle instead of wrapping up and just taking guys to the ground. Yes, props to Chambliss for, showing up and showing out, but he wasn't that incredibly agile and able to get out of trouble that easily. It's like we were just bad at tackling. A number of times we had a good spot to wrap him up in the pocket, and he just kind of squirts through and takes it for 5, 6, 7 yards. You've got to fix that, and especially you got to bounce back next week. Memphis, they won their game yesterday against Troy, but especially you've got to get this fixed before Notre Dame. Even though they're 0-2, they lost to A&M last night. That's still going to be a tough matchup, and like I said earlier, I don't know what has to happen. I don't know if this is a week where you put this team through all pads all week type of situation and be like, hey guys, we're going to figure this out. We're going to practice hard. I don't know. To your point, I don't know what the answer is. Travis Williams has had flashes of where he looks like a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And then other times, specifically against Ole Miss, this defense looks like a paper bag. And it's infuriating. And like you said, and like some of the comments here, it says like, it seems like Pittman is snake bit when it comes to one-loss games. It's like, oh, one-loss games, here we go again. Typical Arkansas scenario. You put yourself in the best position. You're down to the 2-minute warning. You're right there in scoring position. All you got to do is just punch it in. Ball game. You're leaving Oxford with a win and undefeated on the season. But no. And then Ryan says here, I wonder how much of last night was just a bad matchup. Ole Miss was our D now like last year, and Lane Kiffin just has our number. I agree. That's what it seems like. It's like you said, it seems like Lane Kiffin is the kryptonite here, and there's been some good back and forth matchups, but just the past 2 to 3 years, it's just really been tough. And Christopher here says Arkansas needs a new defensive line coach.
No, Deke Adams is a good coach. I think, like I said, I think it has a lot to do with the scheme. Besides, I mean, the dude before Deke Adams got here, you didn't have the type of talent that you have right now. I mean, he's the one who brought in what's his name, Landon Jackson. He's the one who brought in a lot of these DNs like Charlie Collins and Kevion Henderson and Quincy Rhodes. All those guys wouldn't be here without him, right? Before him, you didn't have that type of talent coming to Arkansas. So I don't think that's necessarily like the way to go. But at the same time, like they were artificially trying to create pressure, and it just wasn't happening. So I don't think it's all on the defensive line here. I mean, Quincy Rhodes had a good game. And let's be fair, I'm not blaming all of this on the refs, but there were like 3 or 4 times where they were they were giving pressure to Chambliss, but one of the tackles were holding, or someone on the inside was holding Arkansas's players, and they gave him just enough time to where he could escape. And, I mean, little things like that also play into this too. Now, at the same time, well, where's Cam Ball, dude?
Right.
I mean, I think he's doing, and I've been, pretty clear about how I feel about D tackles. You go in there and you take up space and you let your linebackers do the work. But at the same time, he's not getting like any pressure at all. He's hit. I feel like Ian Jaffard is actually getting, a little bit more pressure than he is. I don't know if he's hurt. He's basically been playing with one arm for like 2 years. So,
right.
I don't know if that's the case or not. I think they looked fine, especially in the run game. I said it earlier. I think they have a really good run defense. It's just the pass. That's their biggest weakness.
Yeah, and it's like, like Ryan says here, and you saw it a little bit last night, but getting Oki back is going to help, but will be better with a full week of practice. Getting healthy is going to be a part of it. But yeah, to your point, it's like Cam Ball is supposed to be your anchor on this D line, and it's like you're like, all right, where's he at? Yes, he had 3 solo tackles last night, but no sacks. Arkansas recorded 1 sack last night, and that was Miguel Mitchell.
Yeah.
One of your secondary. So, like, not even a linebacker, and, that's the thing.
Here's one thing I don't understand. Are you looking at stat broadcast whenever you're looking at or are you just looking at ESPN?
Stat broadcast.
Okay, so, like, you see the quarterback hurries and how they're 0 all the way down. That is not true. That's not true at all, because there was at least one point where Quincy Rhodes pressured Chandler so much that he reached down and grabbed his ankle as he was throwing, which ended up being like a 25-yard play at the end of the day. But like, they were getting pressure to him at some points, especially towards the end of the game when the offensive line started to, kind of die down a little bit. So, like, I don't think this is all on the defensive line. I think if we had to, like, come down and say what part of this defense really needs work, it's the secondary. And it's been like that for years. And I don't know if it's just because the concepts are hard to understand or the communication is just lacking. It's just, I don't know, man.
Right. And that's the one thing too. It's like we're talking about necessarily Travis Williams, but you got to remember he's also still has that and Marcus Woodson is the other part of that defense, and he runs the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And partially that secondary is also under first year coach Nick Perry. So that's another thing to think about too. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think if you had
Well,
to
I
point
mean,
it out,
the other thing you have to think about is that they're all new.
yeah,
Like Larry Worth is like the only person that's starting right now that had significant playing time last year, and I'm using significant lightly right there.
right.
So completely new secondary.
And so, and yeah, it's tough. And, who knows who's going to step up in terms of if Kunai Walker has to miss some time. Do you go back to a guy like we've talked about many a times before in Jaheim Singletary? No stats for him last night. I'm trying to remember if I even saw him on the field last night, but if it was maybe a handful of snaps, but if that. And so, uh, you know, like we said, I don't have any answers. I really hope we can just bounce back, and come out and take care of business against Memphis, because you've really got to do that. You can't let this kind of quote unquote spiral your season. But I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was crazy if you look at, Arkansas's record when they've won their opening SEC game versus losing their opening SEC games. And as you can imagine, all those seasons that we lost opening SEC game, it's not been a great season compared to, when you open up conference play with a win, turns out much better. So, Christopher says here, those are the best receivers Arkansas will face all season. And maybe Tennessee has better. But at the end of the day, hopefully Travis Williams, this whole defensive staff can come together. Kind of, I'm still, torn on, is this tape you go back and watch, or you just flush this and all right, guys, it was a bad defensive outing. Is there anything we can learn from this, or do you just be like, all right, clean slate, let's go back to work. We got Memphis this week, and go that route.
So I don't think you can, because like if you have a bad game, then like out of just randomly you have a bad game, then sure, because that's not your team. I mean, that's how John Calipari put it last season when Arkansas basketball had a bad game. They just said burn the tape because that's not your team. Why watch that when that's not the team that you usually have? Right now, I mean, that's all they've shown us. Right? They've had some bad defense over the last few games, but because we played competition that's so much lower than what we have, that it didn't make a difference. But I guarantee you, Memphis is watching that tape. Notre Dame's going to watch that tape. You need to know where you went wrong and fix it. Right? So, I mean, you got to. And I definitely don't want to be in those film rooms right now. Offensive film room is going to look pretty good, but the defensive film room is not going to be very nice to be in.
Right. Because, I mean, you look at the defense statistics for this game. I mean, no surprise here. Your top two leading tacklers are Steven Dix and Xavier Sorey. 9 for Dix, 7 tackles for Sorey. You've got Julian Neal and Kunai Walker both with 6, Caleb Wooden with 6. So your 3 of your secondary up there leading for tackles. That's kind of a sign either they're getting the ball into the secondary, or in the case of actually watching this game, you're seeing Chambliss get into the secondary and them having to make the tackles. And then following that up, Phillip Lee, Miguel Mitchell, Larry Worth, all with 5. And so, yeah, like you said, you got to go back. These other teams are being like, all right, this is how we beat this defense unless there's some major changes like we talked about. And, yeah, to what you said, and Christopher here says, I believe we can beat Memphis and Notre Dame. Memphis, yes. Notre Dame still looks tough. Yes, they're 0-2. Go back and look at that. They had a shootout themselves with Texas A&M last night. So, and
and that's the part that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that that at least if I want to say makes me feel good is that if if we're in a shootout, at least I know our offense is high powered enough that we can at least keep up with teams. And like I said, if this defense can get you 1 or 2 stops, which that's what this team did last night, as bad as they played, they still got you 1 to 2 stops that allowed you to be in position. What did I say? To get the ball last in the game and have the chance to go down and win it.
Yeah, and you got to think too. Like, the reason why I was worried about Notre Dame is their defense. But if you give it 41 or 42 points to Texas A&M, I'm not, because they didn't even go to overtime, right? That was just regulation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You give up 41 points to Texas A&M. I'm not super scared of your defense anymore. Now, again, you say that, but how good is their offense too? Do you think they're better than Ole Miss? I don't know about that. Ole Miss always has a great offense. So yeah, I think it's possible that if Arkansas's defense can get a stop or two against Notre Dame, Arkansas is going to win that game because the offense is a machine. They haven't been able to. They haven't been stopped by anybody.
Right.
Nobody. So we'll see coming up against Memphis whether or not that continues. But I had no reason to think it won't.
Yeah. Christopher here says they struggled with Reed and Taylor Green is better than Reed. I'll agree with that statement. Taylor Green is better than Marcel Reed.
Yeah.
So
that is true.
If that's the case, I like that, that kind of trend, like Notre Dame's going to come in here and make, they're going to, do what Arkansas is going to do. You have to kind of go back to the drawing board, see where, what is it? Are your guys out of position? Do you need to make some changes, things like that? And so, it'll be a good matchup. And, I'm glad to say that'll be, Ryan took the words right out of my mouth. The fact that game is going to be in Fayetteville makes me feel much better because you have the crowd on your side and maybe there's just that atmosphere of you're playing at home. Unfortunately, it's not a night game, but you're still playing at home. So as we kind of, look forward, Ole Miss, at least it wasn't last year's game where you just absolutely blown out. Yes, it still sucks that we lost, but, at least it was a 1-score game where, we were right there in the game the whole time, and it wasn't just a one-sided affair situation. So going into next week with Memphis, 11 a.m. get kickoff, surprise, surprise. But the one thing, it did get shifted to that it's going to be now on ABC at 11 a.m. So it's going to be one of the national televised 11 a.m. games. Arkansas opens up, according to ESPN, as the 6.5-point favorite in this game.
Yeah, that's a little low. It's a little low. I
With how our
figured it at
defense
least
performed last night, I'm surprised.
Yeah.
That's probably what a big factor of it, too.
Right.
Ryan also said the other thing is Taylor's leadership in this loss, too, pretty impressive. If you didn't see his press conference, he kind of, came in there and said, hey, this isn't on one person. This is a team effort type of thing. He said, we got to go back to the drawing board. Things we performed well, continue to perform well. Things that we didn't do well, go back and, figure out how to, do better. And I think that's, on top of the on-field performance we've talked about. I think Taylor's taken a step in leadership in this over the offseason as well. I know it's some off-the-field stuff, but that's where it starts is, he leads a Bible study with the team. He's doing all these off-the-field things. He has the chemistry with these guys. I think these guys really believe in Taylor. And I think you're seeing that with what they're able to do, having the line is offensive line is better, but he has that leadership where they're playing almost better for him, if you will. So I've been impressed so far this season with what Taylor's been able to do, as the leader of this team as well.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I mean, you can just tell by the body language of this team that even though they were getting, that the the defense was continuously just giving up one touchdown after another right after they would score. They were like, all right, they were like, put on our hard hats, get our lunch pail, and go to work. It wasn't like just the body language wasn't is exactly what you want to see.
Right.
So yeah, I totally agree with that, and it all starts with Taylor Green.
100%. And so, we've seen this offense make those strides. Like you said, I think at the end of the day, this is a top 5 offense. So, they're going to keep you in games. Maybe we can see improvement in the defense. Travis Williams, Marcus Woodson, this entire staff goes back and be like, guys, we've got to do better than this. This weekend kind of just magnified things. We talked about it, how, you saw some glimpses of some struggles against Alabama A&M, some glimpses of some issues against Arkansas State. Well, now that you're up to that same level of competition in the SEC as Ole Miss, that kind of just magnifies or puts a spotlight on those areas that are struggled. And so I want to see this team come back, get better, and learn from this game. And I like the point that Ryan makes here. He said, I like seeing Brown distraught on the sideline. Means he cares. Exactly. It's like Pittman said, he pulled him aside and kind of, talked to him. And, it's not his fault. It happens. That's going to happen. It's probably happened to every player at some point in their career. Thinking about fumbles Taylor's had. We talked about C.J. Brown in this situation last year against Texas. Guys are going to have mistakes where they fumble the ball or turn it over or something happens like that. So, it's not fair to say, oh, Jaylen Brown, this loss is all your fault. Not at all. So, learn from it and then come back, next week ready to go and, come out and score a touchdown next week against Memphis.
Right. And, we talk all of this and we're worried about this team going forward, but at the same time, it's one game. With the schedule that Arkansas is playing, they could probably be a college football playoff, at least be talked as a college football playoff team with 9 wins, right? So you got 2 more losses to where you can go and you can still be considered, not saying they would get in, but considered a college football team, playoff team. So there's a lot of season left to play.
Right. It's like you go in these next 2 games, say you can manage to, get wins there, going into that Tennessee matchup if you're sitting at 4-1, I'll take that. Tennessee is not going to be easy by any point, another type of situation where you saw that Tennessee-Georgia game last night. No, not really any defense there either. Back and forth between Georgia and Tennessee yesterday before the Arkansas game. So this may be just the season of not many defenses being played out there.
It's like the only team in the SEC that has a defense right now is Kentucky. It's about the only team that has a defense. And they have a 1920s offense. So
right,
it is what it is.
So we'll get ready to wrap up, but yeah, tough loss. Hate to see that last night. Arkansas is right there on the cusp of it, and I said this before we started. It all goes back to this kind of personifies what Pittman's career has been here so far, and the Hogs are going to hog, and that's what happened last night, unfortunately. Like Ryan says, that a fumble by Jaylen Brown wasn't necessarily a careless play. It was like he was getting tackled by 2, 3, 4 defenders, and they happened to be able to punch the ball out. So
yeah, it really was a good play,
football play. Yeah, and so learn from this game, come back next week ready to go to work. Another road game. It's not going to be easy. Memphis is undefeated. They've got a very similar style offense as yourself, mobile quarterback that likes to pass and run the ball both, with Brendan Lewis. So, that's going to be something to game plan against. But, Just need to see these guys bounce back. And as we get ready to continue on, quick update for you guys after yesterday. In our Pick'em challenge. So, it was a weird day in college football yesterday.
It was.
And, I'm still leading the way at 17-13. Austin at 15-15, and Hobbs at 14-16. But man, some of those games that we picked, I think the craziest one, and I'm not going to say I told you so, but North Texas over Washington State.
That was nuts.
Like who necessarily thinks that that's going to happen? Like,
yeah, that was ridiculous. And then Georgia Tech beating Clemson. I figured that would happen, but Clemson just looks like crap. Like, it is insane how bad they look. And then Cal beating Minnesota. That was a little bit weird one for me. But I'd like to come out and say South Carolina sucks. I told you guys.
I think we lost Austin for a minute there. So
can you hear me?
We'll see if he pops back up here in a minute. There we are. Yeah.
That was weird. You didn't. So what'd you hear? What was the last thing you heard?
You started talking about Georgia Tech Clemson. And then, technical difficulties. Weird.
Yeah. Georgia Tech Clemson is weird. Clemson is horrible. I didn't see that coming whatsoever. But I'd like to say
Clemson,
South Carolina
has
sucks.
Absolutely lost all my trust.
Yes, yeah, me too. But South Carolina sucks, and I told you guys this. I told everybody this. I've shouted it from the rooftops all season long. They're
Looks
bad.
like we lost Austin there for a minute.
Am I there?
But anyway, some of the games in college football yesterday was just absolutely insane. Some of the games I didn't expect to see the results, like Austin was saying. Clemson, very surprised to see that result yesterday. The Notre Dame game we talked about, seeing Tulane, Duke not getting the win on the road, even though, bigger school we talked about. Summerall at Tulane seems like they've got that that program in a good spot and could be sitting in a spot to be scooped up for a coaching job. We already see there's 2 openings right now at Virginia Tech and UCLA. And so, we're having a little trouble with Austin here, but he wants me to bring up the fact that South Carolina sucks. Austin's word. Vandy gets the win there, 31-7. The North Sellers gets knocked out of this game. And the Vanderbilt Commodores are 3-0. Very surprised to see that result, but wilder things have happened. You pair that with North Texas winning at home against Washington State. Like, that's just the Saturday in a nutshell, if you will. So, as we get ready to wrap up here, don't forget about our friends over at Parker Sports Grill. Parker Sports Grill in Fayetteville is the ultimate spot for Razorback fans, whether it's a game day or just a night out. Parker's has you covered with mouth-watering burgers, wings, and ice-cold drinks served up in true sports atmosphere with TVs on every wall. You won't miss a single play while you're cheering on the Hogs. So grab your crew, head down to Parker Sports Grill, and make it your go-to spot for food, fun, and Razorback sports. That's Parker Sports Grill, where Fayetteville comes to eat, drink, and call the Hogs. It looks like we have Austin back with us now.
That's so weird.
Yeah, but speaking of Parker,
South Carolina sucks. I told you guys this. Every time I tried to give a rant, it went off. So yeah, I've told you guys this. Lenore Seller sucks. All of that. Vandy's better than them. Thank you for proving me right.
But But with Parker Sports Ground, I mentioned it on Thursday. Next Saturday, or I guess this Saturday now, this week, Memphis game. Austin and I are going to be at Parker's doing a pregame show starting at 9:45, and then we'll be there for a watch party for the game with that 11 a.m. kickoff. So swing by and join us at Parker's if you're not heading to the Memphis game or if you need somewhere to go watch the game. Great atmosphere, great place to hang out and watch the game. But before we get out of here, Austin made his rant. While you were off, I mentioned Clemson's lost all my trust. I'm not picking them again in this pick'em. They failed me twice. And so you got anything else before we decide to get out of here?
No, man, it's been a rough weekend, rough pod because my Cox internet is horrible, just so you guys know. But no, man, I'm good.
All right, well, we'll be back on Thursday with our pregame or with our preview show, and then we'll have the pregame show on Saturday. We have a Memphis pod that's going to join us on Thursday to help preview this Memphis game. And so we'll be back then. Everybody have a great rest of your Sunday watching NFL football. And we'll be back with you guys on Thursday. Have a great beginning of your week. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, anywhere you get your podcast. Go follow us across our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, anywhere you get your news. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Austin, myself, we'll see you next time on Thursday as we get ready to start talking about Arkansas at Memphis at 11 a.m. on ABC. So with that,